So the dinner cost $700. We have a room of about 20 to 30 fit in the room. The dinner cost $700. We did several forms of marketing, but the most that was spent was $1,000. So we spent $1,000 on direct mail marketing, but that wasn't what was most effective. What was most effective was some of the precursor marketing that I did. So that's what gets the room full. So that's the marketing that pulls them in, that stirs their interest to come to see what this is about. That's called publicity and advertising. So we're using publicity and advertising to get them to the event where they didn't even have an awareness. And that's exactly how it works. You use publicity to stir awareness, authority, and trust. And then from there you go to advertising to stir an awareness, interest, and desire. And this is the exact steps we use to fill the room with 20 or 30 attorneys. And then when they get to the room, I'm going to take them right through the educational sales formula, which I just explained to you. And that's how you create a lot, way more business than you physically can handle. So here's the basic numbers. So I said $700 for the dinner, $1,000 for the advertising. But remember, we did a couple different things, publicity, advertising, to get them there, and then we're going to use educational sales once they're there. So that's $1,700 to make $500,000 a year. So let's say there's only 20 attorneys in the room. Well, we know from statistics, from my statistics, that we'll get 7 out of 10 of those attorneys to start referring us business. That's the statistics we know from when you know how to do educational sales. And the bottom line is there's two things that happen when you do good educational sales. One is it stimulates the awareness and the motivation for them to refer. What makes them refer to you is that you were the one that gave them the solution. So you not only establish need in the educational sales presentation, but you're the one that gives the solution. And it's no different than you in your life with any problems that you have. When you have somebody show you how to get what you want, get away from what you don't want, and make sense on how to get there while you're eliminating the obstacles, then that's the person that you'll pick. That's the person you'll choose. And that's exactly what happens is the presentation helps to establish the need. It increases the motivation, the pleasure, and the pain-based motivation. But it explains the logic. So that takes care of the need portion. Then we swing around. Then we minimize the top 5 to 7 obstacles. So we eliminate them. And then the very next question are the service factors. And then we go in and we eliminate them. And that's the exact steps we use. So out of 20 attorneys, we'll get 7 of them to start referring. Now, out of 7, we found that we'll average at least 2 referrals a month. 2 referrals a month. And if a typical personal injury case is $3,000, and that's pretty safe to say across the nation. You know, there's some states where it's higher, but there's very few states, I don't know really of any where it's lower. So the average personal injury case is around $3,000. So if we have 14 out of 20 attorneys that refer, and they start referring 2 cases a month, that's at $3,000 a case, that's $42,000 a month. That's a little over $500,000 a year. Now, of course, I have to do 2 things to finish this whole thing up. Number one is I actually have to perform. So everything that you told them you were going to do in the educational sales presentation, you actually have to know how to do. That's called documentation. So that's why it's so important. You not only know documentation, but you have to know educational sales. That's why they go hand in hand. So there's 2 things that you have to do for the follow-up. Number one is you actually have to perform. And then the second thing is you have to maintain the relationship. And so many doctors never maintain the relationships. And I am not talking about taking them out to dinner. I'm not talking about going to a sporting event. And I'm not talking about sending them gifts. I'm talking about regularly and continually helping to support them. And it's as simple as this. You are the authority to help solve their problems. And so there should be regular communication. on identifying what are the primary and secondary problems and you giving the solution to them. And the format is in the exact same format. It's called pleasure, logic, fear. Pleasure, logic, fear. And so your communication from that point on, after you sell attorneys, no matter what you do, better always be what I just said. Pleasure, logic, fear. You better maintain the relationship. You better point them, help redirect them, reinforce where you're taking them, remind them of how bad it can get without you, and remind them of the exact solutions, that's called logic, to take them where they want to go. And when you don't do that, like any relationship, it deteriorates. People go their own way. So the worst thing you can do is after you sell somebody, worst thing you can do is just not keep in contact with them. The second worst thing you do is keep in contact with them, but only talk about dinner or sporting events. Because anybody can talk about dinner or sporting events. You'll always steal the referrals and get the business from the attorney that you solve their problems, even though you don't give them sporting tickets and, dinners and free dinners and things like that. And that's why these doctors that think it's all based on chummy are headed for big problems. And I always say, anybody can come in and offer them 2 dinners or 2 sporting tickets instead of 1. So there's no competitive advantage when it's based on such a weak principle, such as just being chummy.